a biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
I'm going to speak now with Brent Sweeney. Now, Brent is the CEO of Outback Futures. Brent, welcome and thank you for joining us.
No worries. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to talk to you actually because, but first of all, before I get into it, can you just give us a quick sketch of what is Outback Futures? What do you do? What is it?
Yes, Outback Futures is a mental health and community organisation that does work in remote parts of western, northwestern Queensland, central west, even into southwest at times. So for us, it's about providing access to allied health services. So think psychology, counselling, occupational therapy, speech and language pathology for kids, as well as putting capacity or supporting local champions in remote communities to build community effort and community infrastructure to look after themselves.
So when I found out that I was going to be guest hosting, I was able to fill in a few spots of speakers for this week, guests to have on. And I happened to see on my Facebook feed a Facebook post from a friend of ours who you know very well, I know, Peter Whipp from out Longreach Way. And I believe Peter might be on your board, actually. Is that right?
Yeah, Peter's the chair of our board. That's right.
Okay. So they've been friends with us for a while. And Peter, on this Facebook post, it was very moving. And he was saying on this post that it was a video, and he was saying the biggest challenge for the farmers right now is getting their stock sorted out and their fences back up. But he also went on to say that the whole experience has been very mentally challenging for the farmers. But he mentioned also their children, the farmers and their children. Can you just explain what that looks for us? Why is there this big mental challenge right at this time following the floods?
Yeah, no, sure. Well, in some ways, the most significant challenges are going to be in the months and even years ahead. Mm-hmm. Of course, I mean, you can imagine the scale of these floods, but the thing is, people have lost, thousands of head of stock, maybe all of their stock, their income for the next however many years. They've had some of their properties devastated. And so all the enormous stress that comes from that obviously gets loaded up onto a family. A lot of this stuff, probably all of it, is not really insurable, or the insurance cost is so great that it's not worth insuring. So it's just a loss that hits them from a financial point of view, and then obviously from just a relational and a stress point of view. And so that's what people are dealing with. And then the kids are an interesting one. Obviously, when you get that kind of trauma that hits a family and hits a community, the kids, they watch that, they see it in their parents, and they'll often have more of a delayed response. So it may not even sort of start turning up in kids' behaviour or experience for maybe 6 months' time down the track. So there's an awful lot of work really to try and support people in that kind of a scenario in the weeks and months ahead. And adding to all of that is often it's compounded. So they might have just come out of some period of drought, or they might have just been getting themselves back on their feet from bad seasons, or maybe a flood some time ago. And, then it hits again. And if you haven't been able to process and deal perhaps with some of the mental health challenges from prior, then this kind of re-triggers and builds on it.
Yeah. I after listening to Peter, I just went on and just did a little bit of research, and I saw photos of cattle that were being swept against fence lines and just drowned, and they were we're talking dozens at a time, if not more. And I just thought how terribly heartbreaking that would be for a farmer. And particularly, the other question I had for you is, the farmers are, when we think of a farmer, when we think of someone out back in Australia, and particularly men, we think of man's men, they're really rough and ready, and they're able to do anything, and they're very strong. So is it harder for them to reach out, I guess, and say, look, I really need some help. I'm really struggling here. Is there a barrier there, or are you finding that they really do respond well to you being there?
I think there is a bit of a barrier there. I think it's getting less. People are a bit more tuned into this sort of stuff, but there is no doubt that, it's challenging for all of us. I'm a bloke who live in Brisbane. It's not easy to sometimes admit you've got challenges and haven't got it all under control. And I'm sure there'd be many of your listeners that would feel a little bit the same way. But you're right. You go into those very remote, challenging areas. They're very stoic, very often resilient sort of people that can bounce back. But like I said, it compounds and it builds up, and it's sometimes hard to make that initial step to speak to someone. And it might be they need to speak to a counsellor or a psychologist like we provide, but even just learning to speak to your neighbours or others around you to help process things can be very valuable, which is why we think investing into the community in terms of their natural community strengths and connections is really important. That if we can fire those up, then there's a default level of support there for people as well.
So, and when we're talking about farmers, we're always talking about women as well, not just saying there's just men, but women are sometimes more readily able to share their feelings. So I think it's sometimes something for men to really get better at. But just before I let you go, how is Outback Futures supported? Like, are you government funded, or how are you supported? How do you pay for, psychologists and these people to help our farmers?
Yeah, so we have a little bit of government funding, so we're commissioned to do some work from our clinical work in that space, but often it's fairly limited and it's fairly contained. So, just for example, next week I'm doing a trip right down through Quilpie and Targaminda, and none of that's sort of funded. Essentially, we have a range of philanthropic fundraising and donor support to complement the little bits of sort of more regular government funding that we get. So it is a real mix, and we find that being connected on the ground and being with people is really critical to helping them unlock and build those trusted connections. So earlier when you were saying how do you get people to speak up and reach out, well, you've got to be there. Yeah. You've got to turn up. You've got to turn up again. You've got to build trusted relationships. You've got to be consistent. And it's often that kind of really critical sort of community engagement work that's not funded easily. And so for us, we do rely on donations and fundraising and all that sort of stuff to help really, pour petrol on the fire of any government funding that we do get.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. Zoom is okay once you've met that person, but until you've actually touched, shaken the person's hand, it's hard to have a relationship on Zoom. So that initial contact is really important, I can imagine.
Yes.
Do you have a website that you can actually give us now, Brent, for people to go and find out more?
Yes, you can go to www.outbackfutures.org.au and you'll be able to get access to all the information about how to get involved more or support in some way.
Outbackfutures.org.au, is that what you just said? I just want to repeat that.
That's it. That's right.
And what are the towns that you're going to in the next week?
Oh, well, we'll be in a whole range of towns out west.
Okay.
So there's a lot of them, but paying particular attention to those flood-affected towns from, Junda down through Quilpie and Targaminda, areas like that will really need some support in the months and years ahead. So we're going to listen and to figure out how do we make sure we're here for the long term, long after, people like us on the coast have stopped talking about it.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? We line up at our Woolworths, and we don't give thought to the fact that farmers are actually caring for a majority of the Australian landscape and sustainably producing food for our nation. But someone like me, I tend to just line up and pick what I need or even order it online. But when our farmers suffer, we all suffer. And right now, our farmers really need our prayerful and practical support. And Outback Futures is one of the means that we can actually provide that practical and prayerful support through. So I'm really grateful to you. If there's people who are wanting to support you, they can go to your website. But if there's people who are wanting help, they're listening from one of the rural places now and they're thinking, I would really love a visit from someone from Outback Futures. How do they go about that, Brent?
Yeah, just on the same website as well. There's a phone number there or an opportunity to email us too, and we're very responsive for all of that. So that's probably the easiest thing. Go to that same website and they can reach out.
Well, thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you for the work you're doing. It's really so important.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.